1 minute ago, Mount Etna erupted in a way that left everyone who studies it, professionals who've spent decades reading its moods, stunned in silence. The mountain began with a sound you could feel more in your chest than hear. A thick, internal groan, a pressure spike on the instruments that first seemed routine. Then the southeast crater tore open, and instead of the dull red rivers the cameras and textbooks expected, a strange luminous substance poured out, brighter than fire, colder in color, moving with a behavior no geologist could immediately name. Scientists lost it. The warning tremor. Cameras glitched. Spectrometers blinked. For a long, breathless moment, the world of raw data and steady patterns gave way to something that felt dangerously like a mystery. The blast rolled into a pyroclastic surge that raced down the flank at close to 140 kilometers per hour, a wall of ash and gas that scoured land already stripped by earlier activity. It wasn't merely loud, it carried a presence, an anger, so physical that team members later described their ears ringing for hours. The surge flashed over terraces and gullies, chasing the field teams back as wind shifted and ash thickened to a smothering gray. People on nearby slopes said the air tasted metallic and sharp, the kind of stench you only learn to recognize with dread. But the surge was not the only shock. Someone on the ridge coaxed a sample from the flow, a fragment small as a coin, then wrapped it in protocol and hurried it through the chain of custody. What that vial delivered to the labs across Europe did something rare. It broke the comfortable assumptions of an entire discipline. A sky that shouldn't be this color. In the field lab, the broken rules started accumulating as oddities. Under ultraviolet light, the fragment fluoresced in a way technicians had never catalogued. Gamma sensors pegged out of range. Induction furnaces cranked well past typical melting points for volcanic glass, yet the piece resisted liquefaction, only shimmering with ghostly blue-white arcs beneath the heat lamps. Someone joked, too quietly, that it behaved like lightning trapped in stone. The joke died fast. When the crater split open. Back at Katana, the sample's arrival triggered the sort of procedural seriousness you see only when people sense a real problem. The reinforced canister clicked open with a hiss. Vapor bloomed with an eerie sheen. Automated shutters slammed, and the lab moved to negative pressure. A technician reached for the casing and recoiled. His gloved wrist bore a raw red welt, as if the material had left a tiny brand. Medical staff hustled him away. The facility sealed down, not in panic, but in a sober, methodical way of scientists protecting evidence and lives. As analytic teams ran X-ray diffractions, mass spectrometry, Raman spectroscopy, and a slew of standard routines, more anomalies stacked up. XRD patterns showed peaks where no silica oxide lattice should register. ICP-MS returned rare earth and trace element ratios, yttrium, cerium, and lanthanides in concentrations unexpected for surface magmas. Raman results hinted at lattice structures consistent with extreme pressure phases, as if the material had been born under loads and temperature far below the crust, then somehow shot upward intact. Across partner labs, Berlin, Paris, GFC, and others, results came back with the same uncomfortable chorus. No contamination found, calibrations verified, measurements repeatable. Scientists checked sample chains, paperwork, and instrument health. They reran everything. The data did not fold back into normalcy. It pushed outward, asking harder questions. One of the hardest questions was practical. What does this say about Etna's plumbing? Satellite interferometry and cosmic ray muon tomography began showing their own mysteries. Synthetic aperture radar interferograms revealed asymmetric inflation concentrated beneath the southeast sector, the very area of the eruption. Muon scans showed gaps where expected muon flux vanished, suggesting voids or unexpected changes deep inside. Seismic arrays mapped unusual silent zones, areas where the usual chatter of magma movement faded into emptiness. The models that had reliably predicted Etna's behavior for years suddenly frayed at the edges. Racing toward the unknown. For people living on the slopes, the eruption was both spectacle and threat. Vineyards and olive groves that have fed families for generations held their breath. In Safarana, the Russo family argued over whether to leave. Some elders packed and left at once, memory forwarding them to the safer towns below. Others refused, clinging to roofs or radios, unwilling to abandon a lifetime of work. In Milo and across the lower towns, church bells and sirens mixed with the static voice of civil defense advisories, sometimes contradicting one another as new data arrived. At the same time, politics and profit inserted themselves into the space between science and community. Within days, reports surfaced of private drones and prospectors sniffing slopes for rare minerals. 2 foreign conglomerates filled exploratory permit requests. Activist groups mobilized quickly, organizing marches under banners reading "Hands off Etna." UNESCO status and park protections featured in heated council meetings. The scientific standoff. Inside command tents and observatory control rooms, the technical arguments were intense and sometimes bruising. Some specialists urged restraint. The results might be instrument artifacts, shipping contamination, or a fluke phase. Others, quieter and more urgent, said the numbers were consistent across independent methods and labs. The hazard models responded by creeping upward. Infrasound records registered low-frequency surges that often precede structural failure. Combined thermal maps and SAR displacement overlays showed a persistent hotstone tracking beneath the southeast flank. A confidential memo circulated among senior scientists and civil defense. Thresholds exceeded. Asymmetric inflation persistent. Recommend immediate review of evacuation protocols. And yet, the public statements remained cautious. Officials balanced the risk of false alarm against the moral duty to protect lives. Evacuation plans were reviewed, buses stood by, but the broad mandatory orders were delayed by hours as the team sought fuller consensus. That delay, small and procedural, felt massive to the families who had decided whether to pack a few bags or stay to protect fields and livelihoods. Science moved the only way it reliably does, methodically and insistently. The INGV issued a terse technical bulletin. Preliminary analysis yield no match in existing terrestrial igneous databases. Raw data were posted to secure service for international peer scrutiny. The message was careful, but the subtext was clear. This was not a standard eruption. Senior researchers launched urgent campaigns. More muon runs, denser seismic arrays, borehole temperature logs, and targeted satellite passes. International teams arranged blind tests and exchanged samples. The torrent of late-night calls and encrypted messages that followed had a tone of adrenaline mixed with fatigue, excitement, and apprehension in equal measure. The hidden deformation. For all the tests and memos and activism, one thing remained simple and devastating. Mount Etna had done something new. It had produced a material that defied expectation, and it had done so in a time when its internal structure showed signs of instability resembling conditions from millennia past. Conditions that in ancient times preceded flank failure and Mediterranean tsunamis. Those two facts together tighten the conversation from academic curiosity to pressing hazard. What happens next depends on data, decisions, and a little fortune. Scientists will sift, sample, and model until something that looks like an explanation appears. Officials will decide when and how to move people, a balance of risk and cost that no technical report can make for them. Families will choose between fleeing and staying. The mountain will continue to behave as it will. The memo no one wanted to read. Etna slopes have always been a place of divided loyalties, between safety and sustenance, between the lure of fertile ground and the memory of ash. Today, those trades look sharper, and the question no one wants to answer is the hardest one. Has the volcano entered a new chapter of behavior, or have we simply caught it doing something rare within known bounds? For now, we only know what we saw. A luminous outburst, a violent surge, a strange sample that refused to behave, sensors that flagged conditions they were calibrated to watch for, and a community that now watches back with new urgency. Scientists have lost the easy labels. That loss is frightening because it means the mountain has once again outpaced the neat boxes of our understanding. And so we wait, watching the satellite updates and listening for the next bulletin, because when Etna speaks this loudly, we listen. Make sure our channel erupts by hitting that like and subscribe button and follow more content like this.